Welcome to the fall meeting of the Hudson River Valley Greenway, the National Heritage Area. We're delighted all of you could join us, and as we do with all of our meetings, we begin with a pledge to the flag. Back here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, great. And as we begin, we'd like to go around the room and introduce ourselves. I'm Kevin Burke, Chair of the Hudson River Valley Greenway Conservancy. And to my right is...
Scott Taylor. Jane McLaughlin, Treasurer of the Greenway Conservancy.
Good morning, I'm Jamie Ethier with the Department of State's Office of Planning and Development.
Betsy Jacks, Thomas Cole National Historic Site.
Meg Downey, Duchess Representative on the Communities Council.
Steve Salan, Communities Council.
Over this side.
Andy Beers with Hudson Greenway staff and Director of the Empire State Trail.
Rich Stein, Chief of Staff for Assemblymember D.D. Barrett.
Michelle Smith, Hudson Highlands Land Trust and Communities Council Representative from Putnam County.
Hi, I'm Betty Head, and I'm the Albany County Representative on the Communities Council.
Jane Daniels on the Greenway Conservancy.
Linda Aldrich, Communities Council member.
Johanna Yon, Orange County Historian, Communities Council.
Linda Vonderheide, Rensselaer County Community Council's a member.
Jason Wolfanger, Delegate for Commissioner Harris, the New York State Department of Education.
Yes, is there anyone on the phone before we go to the back? Anyone calling in today?
Hi, Vincent Altieri for Rockland County Executive Ed Day. Owen Rafter representing County Executive Marcus Molinaro.
Okay, and then we go to the back.
Karen Ross, New York State Office of Parks.
Bill Burrows, Slabsides, and John Grove Nature Sanctuary, grateful recipient of the
Colonel Jim Johnson, Military Historian, Executive Director, Hudson River Valley Institute of Harris County.
Barbara Sweet, Hyde Park resident. Priscilla Brendler, Executive Director of Greater Hudson Heritage Network and a grateful recipient of the partnership proposal with the the Heritage Area.
Kathleen Davis, Town of Hyde Park Recreation Director and Hyde Park Trails Coordinator.
Carl Beard with the National Park Service Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance Program.
Christina Hengel, Public Policy, Preservation League of New York State.
Von Idu, District Office Liaison for Assemblymember D.D. Barrett.
Morning, I'm Glenn Gadali. I'm a planner with Barton Judas Engineering.
Good morning, Allison Weinrapp, the Village of New Hempstead.
Hi, good morning. Dara Morin, Hudson River Valley Greenway staff.
Good morning, Paul Glesta, Project Director, working with Andy on the Empire State Trail. Tim Rogers, Village of New Paltz Mayor.
Diane Argyle, Village Mayor of Alatia.
Jim Dunham, Mayor of the Village of Pinderhook.
I'm Dan Jeanson, I'm Greenway staff.
Shannon Day, Greenway staff.
Okay, that's it. Well, welcome everyone. We're now in our post-election clearing of the air, and I think everyone's settling in and getting ready for the holiday season. So thank you for taking the time out this morning to join us. We're always delighted to be here. I understand some of our friends coming in from upstate had a more difficult drive than those coming from downstate. So we're just glad that everyone is safe and sound and we are together. We are, unfortunately, very sadly, down in our ranks today. Scott broke the news to us a few weeks ago that our longtime friend of the Greenway, Frank Bergman, passed away. And we instantly knew that we wanted to pause this morning to honor him and to recall him and to formally acknowledge him with a resolution. Before we do that, I thought that, Scott, you might want to say a few words about Frank, someone that you worked with and quite close to. So.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, Frank had a deep and abiding love of the Hudson River, and as an advisory board member, he was never shy about giving advice. If he thought we were wrong, he told us. Nicely, but he told us, right, Fran? And when he thought we were right, he also told us that, which is a rare quality. I will miss his counsel and his wisdom, particularly as it pertains to the boating, the powered boaters of the Hudson River. And he will be hard to replace.
Thank you, Scott. And Scott and Shannon were kind enough to draft this resolution, which Barney and I have signed, and I just wanted to read it to all of you this morning. It's a proclamation from the Greenway that reads, whereas Frank Bergman was an outstanding advisory member of the Greenway for 11 years, and whereas Frank Bergman gave to the Greenway substantial time and much of his considerable wisdom about safety boating and the Hudson River Valley, and whereas Frank Bergman was a valued advisory member to the Greenway and participated in many ways in the affairs of the Greenway and the joint boards of the Greenway, and whereas the passing of Frank Bergman in October 2018 saddens every member of the Greenway, now therefore be it resolved, the joint boards of the Greenway and the Greenway Conservancy do recognize the many contributions of Frank Bergman, note that his presence and cheerful mien will be greatly missed by all, and do send our condolences to his family. And that will be sent to him along with a card that's been signed by us and all the staff. So let's definitely keep Frank in our hearts. And before we move on, we should actually vote on this resolution so that we all have a say in it. So I guess I'll just call for a first and a second, and then, okay, Fran and Bob, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Great. So it's formally recognized, and this will be hopefully some comfort to his family as they head into the holidays with our friend. Yes.
Could I suggest that I go to those meetings, that either someone from the Greenway or I can actually also bring a copy and read it out loud at that
That'd be
meeting?
great. Yeah. Maybe we can arrange that through Scott and Shannon. Very good. So this morning we have a nice opportunity to hear from Beth Cabchero, who's a stalwart on the Greenway staff and does so many things, including overseeing our trail program. And Beth is going to use this occasion to brief all of us on the progress that she's making and the team is making, and to entice us with some of the new offerings. So Beth, do you want to?
Good morning, everyone. Hope this isn't too much familiar territory, but some people are new to the board and might want to just hear a little bit about the Greenway Trail Program, which is the main program that I work on. Just getting used to using this remote. So I just wanted to put out there some of the goals of the Greenway Trail Program. Primarily, we're trying to provide physical and visual access to the Hudson River. But beyond that, promoting and preserving the Hudson Valley's natural, historic, cultural, recreational, scenic, and agricultural resources through trail linkages. Trails can be a quiet economic engine. We want to contribute to the development, economic development of our local communities. And through the Greenway, we've provided a community-driven, voluntary process for establishing trails. And then through the Greenway Trail Program, we want to encourage the development of trail links that form larger networks. The Greenway Act, the original Greenway Act legislation, calls for the establishment of a trail along the Hudson River on both on both sides. Oops, I forgot to, this is slide. At this time, we have several different categories of trails though, because at some point it was recognized that not all trails that are important to communities and that are important to the Hudson Valley are going to be with direct physical or visual access to the Hudson River. So we have riverside trails, and then we have countryside corridors, which are more of our rail trails and longer trails that are not directly within view or sight of the Hudson River, but provide important connections. And then connector trails kind of don't fit into either one of those categories, but they are important to communities. They link to maybe historic sites, or they link to downtowns. So they're important in their own right, even if they might not be along a trunk line. The Hudson River Greenway Water Trail, of course, is a part of the Greenway Trail system. We include land and water trails as part of the Greenway Trail system. And then when the Greenway legislation was created, they also made State Bike Route 9 was designated as part of the Greenway Trail system. And to this point, all of these Greenway trails have been established through locally driven and nominated designation. So this is just a map showing the green squiggly lines are the designated Greenway trails. And this actually is a little bit out of date. It goes back to 2011. We haven't had a GIS intern since 2011. So, but you can kind of see how we've made progress, but it still doesn't have that connectedness, which kind of led to some of the other things we'll be hearing about today. So the Greenway has, without having regulatory authority, we have other means of helping trail groups. Provide technical assistance for planning and developing trails. That's just one example of one of the documents that we've created, Getting Started, a Guide to Planning Trails in New York State. But we also just provide one-on-one or presentations to trail groups and things like that. There's funding for Greenway Trail development, the Greenway Trail Grant Program. We sponsor conferences and workshops where we can get maybe the whole county together and start thinking about how we can make these trail connections. There's special events that highlight trails. So for example, the Hudson River Valley Ramble, which is another big project that I work on every year, we're not just trying to celebrate just the Hudson Valley in general, but the amazing recreational opportunities that are available in the Hudson Valley, especially along our trails and along the river. And then Greenway Trail designation helps to recognize and support local trails. It gives them certain advantages on certain state grants to be a designated Greenway Trail and through to the Greenway Trail grant program as well. And it kind of just raises their level of recognition as being part of a larger system. So briefly mentioning the Greenway Water Trail, this is really Scott's bailiwick, but in 2001 the Greenway was awarded funding to establish the Hudson River Greenway Water Trail, and thanks to Scott's efforts, this water trail now has, the goal is to provide access points every 10 miles on both sides of the river and campsites every 15 miles, and we have how many? Over 100 sites, 116 sites at this point. And it's 256 miles. So it's a national water trail, and it's one of the gems really of the Hudson Valley that we have this recreational opportunity available. The Great Hudson River Paddle was a project that was used to promote the water trail. Some of you may recall for many years, Scott led a trip from Albany to New York City, camping along the way. So 10 years. And though it wasn't, we weren't able to continue it, we did try to have a revival of it this year with actually an outfitter running it. And he broke it up into two parts. So one half of the trip was this summer and the other half would be next summer. But it was really a kind of all expenses luxury trip down the Hudson River with meals and everything. So the Greenway Connection Study was begun in 2015. So we were trying to identify, okay, so we have these disconnected trails, but is there a way that even if we don't have a consistent connected trail on both sides of the river, is there a way to get from one end of the river to the other on trails if you have to crisscross? And that would take advantage of some of these really nice corridors and regional trail systems that have begun to develop throughout the valley. And it was completed in 2018. But in the midst of that, the Empire State Trail was announced. Really through the efforts of the Greenway and parks, it was recognized that there could be this route that connected the Greenway Trail and the Erie Canalway Trail. And in his State of the State, 2017 State of the State speech, Governor Cuomo announced $200 million to fund construction of this trail. And Andy's going to update us later on the progress, but it's been made amazing progress. It's going to be the longest multi-use state trail in the nation. And, you know, it really kind of grew out of this. Well, how can we connect to the Hudson River Trail? Oh, wait a minute. We can go out west, too, and we can have this 750-mile trail. West in New York. We're not going all the way. Go west, young men. So this is just the map of the Empire State Trail, proposed Empire State Trail. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the Conservancy Trail Grant Program, because prior to getting any of this funding for the Empire State Trail, this is the main way that we had to advance the Greenway Trail program and to fund projects that would add mileage. Now, one of the priorities is to connect existing Greenway trails to the Empire State Trail. So that's one direction we're trying to take the trail grant program in. And we've been fortunate enough to get additional funding since the Empire State Trail project has been begun to be able to fund even more projects. You know, we were working for years with maybe about $50,000 in grants, and this year we were fortunate to have $500,000. So those were awarded at the last meeting, so those of you who are there have some idea of the kind of projects that we fund. But I wanted to just go over the different trail grant categories and the way that we evaluate them. So there's construction, which for years obviously we weren't able to fund too much construction because $50,000 spread out over the entire valley doesn't get you a lot of trail mileage. But we have been able to, over the past couple of years, fund projects to construct trail segments, or this year water trail sites, to further the Greenway Trail program. Design, so it just doesn't have to be just construction, but a project that's going to be a feasibility study or design or actually plan the trail segment. Rehabilitation and improvement projects, and these are really, they include trail amenities, but they can also be if there's been they're not regular trail maintenance, but if there's been a real a blowdown on the trail or something that's that really needs to be addressed in order for this to be a functioning trail again. And then education and interpretation projects, which is kind of a kitchen sink category, but anything that's going to enhance the trail user's experience through such as signage or kiosks, mobile tours, websites, things of that nature that fall into that kind of educating the trail user about where they are and what the trail is about. So unlike the Greenway Communities program, grant program, municipalities and not-for-profit organizations are eligible for the trail grants, which is nice because a lot of our historic sites and not-for-profit organizations, our land trusts and things like that, run some really nice trails. And so this year we also included water trail projects as part of the grant program. We hope we can do that again next year. And the grants are going to be announced in June and awarded in November, now that we've changed the structure of the meeting a little bit. So the staff and the grants committee review all of the grants, and then the grants committee makes recommendations to the board, which is the same structure as with the community's grant program. This year we really wanted to give priority to trails that connected to the Empire State Trail or other designated Greenway trails. And then rehabilitation or education and interpretation of already designated Greenway trails. And then, as with all of our grants, the projects have to address at least one of the Greenway criteria. This is just a view of hikers on Storm King during the Ramble. So some of the additional criteria that we use for construction or design projects, we want to connect communities to the Hudson River or other important resources. Hopefully they include some maintenance provisions and encourage stewardship by the local populace. Rehabilitation or improvement projects, we want them to highlight the natural, culture, and historic resources. And the same thing with education and interpretation projects, something that educates the trail users, enhances the trail experience, and especially if it's using some kind of innovative or new technology. And some of the other things we take into consideration that will give additional points to a trail grant are intermunicipal projects or partnerships, projects that address climate change, providing a non-motorized route between communities or to resources such as a historic site. If the project is also part of some other local, regional, or statewide plan, if it will preserve, enhance, or educate people about biodiversity. Community participation, whether it's through volunteer work on the trail or doing public outreach. Projects aren't required to comply with ADA, but if they have that as part of their project goals, then that gives additional consideration. And aligning with the goals of the Regional Economic Development Councils, which most of these projects do. So it's just a little bit about how we do the trail program. That's my contact information. As I said, we don't know how much we're going to have for the trail grant program yet, so we can't develop the applications just yet, but we're hoping that with enough notice of how much we'll have, we'll be able to make the announcement that the funding is available in June, and then we'll probably be due in October and awarded in November. And if anyone has any questions or wants to talk to me later, I'd be happy to. Thank you for listening.
We're happy to have you. Beth's been doing this for 15 years. She doesn't look like she's old enough, but she has. And when she started, we used to talk about $100 and things like that. Now, thanks to the governor, the trail program is rich beyond the dreams of ordinary averages. It really is. And thanks in large part to your extraordinary work, really. And you don't get it, you don't find Beth's every place, because she has been doing, for 15 years, she's been working on this.
Well, I started doing scenic byways
Scenic
when
byway.
I started at the Greenway, and then did trails and scenic byways, and then we finished the scenic byways project. And then continued with trails.
Well, we all think you're doing a great job.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.
Real quick, Beth, as you had mentioned, when it comes to construction, unfortunately, money only goes so far when it comes to actual infrastructure. But the Department of State, as well as many of our other agencies, whether it be Estuary Program or Office of Parks and Recreation, have other funds that complement Greenway grants. And so what's nice is sometimes Greenway can come in and do a feasibility analysis and then go through the CFA or the consolidated funding application and seek other additional funds to do the actual implementation. So for many years, Greenway and the other state agencies have partnered nicely in communities on actual infrastructure or construction projects, and it's just great to have all the funds available. So just want to let everybody know that.
Thanks. That's a really good point. Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I also want to echo Barney's comments about Beth and Scott and the entire team. They just make us look good and make this work look easy, but it's not, and it's anything but easy, and they do a wonderful job at it. Okay, now we're going to pivot into the business portion of the meeting, and that always begins with a review of the agenda and any board member comments on that agenda circulated in advance, but want to give people space to make that comment. Otherwise, we can proceed. We're going to, of course, approve past minutes, move into the conservancy portion of the meeting, which has a few different elements to it, and then the Communities Council will be Barney's chance to take the podium, and then we will then move into the National Heritage Area, and then wrap up with Scott's director's report and any public comments. Okay, very well. So the next up is to approve our past minutes. We met on September 12th and need to approve those minutes. Those are the, again, combined meeting of the Greenway Communities Council, the Conservancy, and the Heritage Conservancy. So hopefully all of you had a chance to review those minutes. Now I'd like to call for a vote to approve those minutes, which begins with the first and the second. Bob is first, and a second. Jane? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. And then on October 11th, the Greenway Conservancy met by phone, and we need to confirm those minutes as well. So this is just for members of the Greenway Conservancy. We'll need a first and a second for those as well. So, Jane? And a second? Betsy? Okay. All in favor on the Conservancy? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, great. And then finally, last week on the 5th of November, our Grants Committee met to review the grants that we'll be hearing about today, and we do need to formally adopt those minutes. So this is just for members of the Grants Committee, which is a much smaller group, but again, the same process. Meg is a first, and a second. Jane? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Great. So those are now in the books, and we now open up the Conservancy portion of the program, and I call that meeting of the Conservancy to order. And our first order of business in the Conservancy section of the meeting is the election of officers, which is an important step. This has been an exciting time for us. Scott and I have been talking for some time about this, and we've had some openings, and now we're ready to fill those openings. And so we'd like to present that slate of officers to this board. I'm currently in the role of chair, but we now have an opportunity to appoint a vice chair, and we've asked Betsy Jacks to consider stepping into that role, and she's graciously agreed to do so if you all agree as well. And Sarah Olson, who's the former site superintendent here at the Roosevelt site, who still lives in Rhinebeck, is offered to fill the role of secretary. And then in treasurer, we still have Jane McLaughlin, who's filled this role quite nobly and valiantly, going painstakingly through all of our documents and audits. And thank you so much for agreeing to remain in that position. I'd like to give you a chance just to speak before we do vote. Betsy, this is an opportunity for you to join the officer ranks, and we're delighted that you've agreed, but just thought you might want to say a couple words.
Well, thank you. I didn't plan any remarks, but I'm greatly honored to step up into the vice chair position if I'm so voted. And I really believe strongly in what this organization does and have been so admiring of what you've done and past chair has done and all the staff. I think that this is a rare example of partnerships across political lines, across communities, and a great example for our nation. So I'm delighted to be a part of it.
Wonderful, thank you. Jane?
Hi, everyone.
I love numbers, and I really enjoy being treasurer. It is a weight. It's a $14 million budget. I so appreciate the depth and the breadth of Scott's knowledge. He and I will often go over the budget line by line by line because I always have a lot of questions, and he can answer every one of them.
Yep.
It's impressive. So it's a pleasure to work with the Greenway team and serving all of you.
Thank you so much. So with that, I'd like to just call on our Conservancy members to consider this slate and to vote on them. So first and second. Jane is a first. Second from the Conservancy side. Don't be shy. Who's here from the Conservancy that can provide a second for us? Nope, not the council members. Well, I guess it'll have to be one of our vetting officers. Oh, I'll second it. Why not? Okay. All right. So this is for the Conservancy members. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? The slate is elected. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, now we've got to move into the numbers that Jane was just speaking about, and that is a presentation on the audit and the budget, and then we'll call for approval and adoption of both. So Scott, do you want to take the podium?
Thank you, Kevin. Congratulations, Betsy and Jane. Well, you're appointed, so. We held our audit for 2017-2018 fiscal year, which runs April 1 to March 31st. In July, we have a clean opinion on both the Conservancy and the not-for-profit and the combined statements, and the management letter contained no issues again this year. Jane, do you want to add anything?
Just wanted to say that that doesn't happen by accident. It's a testimony to the work of the Greenway staff and Scott in particular.
We're asking you to consider a draft combined operating budget, and this will be a vote for all of the board members on this piece. And you should all have received this in your packet. I don't want to go over it in detail. As much as Jane and I enjoy doing that, it seems tough. It is a $14 million budget, and a lot of that is because of the Empire State Trail, which is $10 million of that. So, Andy, it's all your fault. The budget is balanced. We show a slight surplus for sales of National Heritage Area guidebooks and for water trail maps. Otherwise, everything is balanced and has come into, it's ready to go. Jane, do you have anything to add? So, does anyone have any questions?
I also just wanted to add that Scott is very modest. For the last couple of years, he's filled the role of acting executive director of the Greenway, but really has not had a backfill on the old role that he had, which was overseeing all of these numbers. He's kind of juggling both of those positions right now. And the fact that Jane, as you say, makes it look so easy and does such an expert job on it, we have to keep in mind that you're really doing two jobs. And that's really not easy to do. And we wanted to commend you. Barney and I were talking on the train ride up this morning, what a comfort it gives to us as chairs to have Scott in the position that he's in. He is such a person of a paragon of integrity and dependability and trust, and we know that we are in very good hands with Scott. So thank you.
Well, now I'm thoroughly embarrassed. Thank you.
So there's actually two votes, right? Okay. So the first of them is the approval of the audit for 2017-2018. This is, again, just for the Conservancy. Now, we're a small group, but like a first and a second, and then to vote on them? Jane, okay. A second from the Conservancy. Betsy, okay. And all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so the audit is approved, and then we actually have to then look forward and adopt the 2018-2019 budget. So this is combined? So this is anyone on the boards, either board. So first and a second. Win as a first? Meg second? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, great. So the budget going forward is adopted as well. And you mentioned the lion's share of the Empire State Trail. That brings us now to Andy, who is our guide, our steward on the Empire State Trail, and is here to give us an update on it. And again, we were talking this morning, the current administration really does deserve so much credit for leading the charge and creating this visionary trail that will really be best in the nation. And so, Andy, I'd like to give us an update on that.
Thank you. I'm just going to give a very brief update. We continue to make fantastic progress on the Empire State Trail. Our first round of projects, construction projects, are actually being completed. We were out in Montgomery County near Amsterdam last month to cut the ribbon on a new 5-mile section of the Erie Canalway Trail that was constructed by State Parks with Empire State Trail money. That's a new 5-mile section on the Erie Canalway Trail section, more than 85% done, but the Empire State Trail is finishing the project, closing the gaps. This was a 5-mile section where previous to the construction of this section of trail, the trail route was on the shoulders of State Route 5S, which is a 55-mile-per-hour road, and so really it was limited in use to experienced bicyclists. You weren't taking your kids there with their training wheels. It's getting great reviews. I took my bike out there another weekend and I couldn't even fit in the parking lot. It was overflowing, and people are really using these new sections of trail. More locally here, those of you, I know the mayor is here from New Paltz, have been seeing the great progress on the section of trail that will ultimately connect the walkway over the Hudson to New Paltz, and from there connecting to the Walkill Valley Rail Trail and the new River to Ridge Trail and everything else that's happening in New Paltz. The county cut the ribbon this fall on their 1-mile section. The town cut their ribbon on their section at Tony Williams Park in the last several weeks. And Jason Wolfanger from DOT is the project manager for the last piece, which is under construction, which will ultimately connect across the thruway bridge into New Paltz. So great to see that piece coming together. Some of our more complex projects, the biggest ones were the various entities, both our organization and others that are designing those, are in the final design phase. One of the major projects is a 23-mile new rail trail that Metro North is connecting between Hopewell Junction down to Brewster, so in Putnam and Dutchess counties. And they are opening the bids on that tomorrow. So our fingers are crossed on that, but that project will be going into construction next spring. The last thing I would say about the Empire State Trail is we also, we are out in September in Buffalo to receive a major private foundation award. So there was a gentleman, Ralph Wilson. He owned the Buffalo Bills. He founded the Bills, owned it for 50 years. He passed away in 2014. And at the direction of his will and estate, the proceeds of selling the Buffalo Bills were used to create the Ralph Wilson Foundation, a modest $1.2 billion foundation created. And they're just standing up their programs, but one of their focus areas is parks and trails, and we were in September out in Western New York to receive a $6.5 million foundation grant for the Empire State Trail for the sections between Buffalo and Rochester. And we're going to be using that for additional trail construction work on the Empire State Trail. A portion of it's being used to complete construction of a spur that will go from Tonawanda up to Niagara Falls, so connecting that to the Empire State Trail. And then the last piece of it is the focus area of that foundation is Rochester to Buffalo. And so along that route, roughly $3 million of our grant we are using to create gateways and trailheads and other amenities along that route to really give a world-class experience. And my colleagues, Paul Glesta and Dara Morin, Dara is brand new to our third member of our Empire State Trail team, are leading that effort. We're literally out there last week with our consultants standing in snow in Tonawanda and Lockport and Rochester, kicking off the design process for these gateway welcoming areas in these various cities and routes along the way. So that's a quick overview on the Empire State Trail. And then secondly, the project that the Greenway is constructing, as you know, is the Albany Hudson Electric Trail, a 36-mile new trail from the city of Rensselaer and Rensselaer County down to city of Hudson and Columbia County. We're closing in on finishing the design of that. Our schedule is to be ready to bid the project by the end of December, and we are sprinting but on schedule for that. We're completing the last of our public outreach meetings last night. Diane Argyle, the mayor of Valatia, is here. We had a very lively meeting in Valatia, a public input meeting, not so much on the trail, but how we're proposing to reconfigure a road intersection right next to the trail. And we're taking the input of that and to kind of finish that design piece. Tomorrow night, we're at the town of Nassau and the village of Nassau for the last public meeting there. We did complete our environmental impact statement for the project. Thank you for the Conservancy board members who worked through us in that. So that completed in October when we enacted the finding statement. So that's all set. Our last permit applications with DEC and Army Corps of Engineers are pending. So basically, we are on schedule to bid the project for the end of December with the contract award for spring construction start for the 2-year construction cycle. So we certainly will keep you apprised of that as we finish off the work as well. So that's a quick report on the project.
I just want to say a word about this, which is, I'm always thinking about history, and if you go back in time and think about the building of the Erie Canal, or you think about the building and construction of Central Park, if you had been around at the time that those were being planned, they were very difficult, very arduous, so much labor that had to go into, every aspect of the engineering, and planning, and budgeting, and community, alignment, and yet the result are these incredible places of beauty and wonder. And I never try to lose sight of the fact that all the work that this very small, but very capable team is doing on our behalf is going to result in something that inspires beauty and wonder and engagement. And it can get lost in the details of public meetings and the consultants and the mapping and all of that. But in the end, we're trying to create an incredible experience that will be 750 miles of trail that will lead the nation in creating a remarkable engagement and experience for families and cyclists and people who love to be outdoors. And it will be a giant leap, I think, for our state. And I wanted just to make sure that all of you who are in the trenches every day, managing this process and trying to corral it and keep it on schedule, know what you really are a part of is something truly titanic in our history. And I think it's something that we should all commend and support and express our admiration for.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm not sure we appreciate the Titanic reference, but other than that, we'll take those kind words.
Very true. Very true.
I would say one more thing where some interested board members could be involved, speaking to history, is for the Albany Hudson Electric Trail and the Maybrook Trail, the 2 big rail trail projects in the Hudson Valley, we have reserved money in the budget for interpretive programming. And the Greenway will be doing a procurement later this fall. We've been focused on just getting the engineering and construction going, but we'll be doing a procurement later this fall or early next year to hire an interpretive consultant to do interpretive plans for both of those that will include, website-based materials, but also fabrication and installation of, between the 2 projects, a total of 50 interpretive signs along the routes that tell the history about how these rail lines shape the communities that they go through and other kind of natural and, Native American history and other things. So, there's a process for doing that, but we will need a lot of input and assistance in deciding what are the themes we're going to interpret and, what does the panel in Valatia say? Where does it go and what does it say, right? And what's depicted on it? So there'll be an opportunity for people that are interested in that facet of the work to participate and review kind of what we're doing there as well.
That's a great opportunity.
Yep.
I have the day that the Empire State Trail going right through it. And I'm hoping that there can be some interpretation signs. I know North County Trailway does have some county put up, but I can see additional ones put up along there. But I can understand why you want those 2 to get in first and then develop others. We did have 2 staff members come and check out where you're going to have a gateway. I was very pleased to see that, and our town supervisor showed up for that meeting. So it's really nice to see the enthusiasm locally for something like this. I'm hoping to get more news out to my community. Hey, this is something that's really happening. It's going to be really nice for the town.
Okay, so we go from the land to the water, right? And Scott, you're going to talk to us now about the important committee that you serve and give us an update.
Sorry, Barney. The Hudson River Harbor Safety, Navigations, and Operations Committee held its first general membership meeting here in this room on October 2nd. It was a brainstorming session where we reached out to the 50 or so people who attended and asked them what their thoughts were, and asked them what are the things on the river that concern them the most. And the top 7 are anchorages, oil spill response and recovery, the Harbor Surge Barrier Project proposed by the Army Corps of Engineers, boater safety, the Champlain Hudson Power Electric Project, real-time information for those navigating on the river, particularly commercial ships, and the commercial recreation interactions that occur between the tugs and the barges and the power boaters and the kayakers. So those were the top 7. I just want to salute Shannon Day for organizing the meeting. It was essentially, she put together an extra board meeting just to hold that, and we heard a lot of very positive feedback from the Coast Guard and the members of the steering committee on how that meeting went. So, any questions on that? Barney, you're up.
Never too late to go. And Scott and I have been here since, it's been nearly, it feels like a century, but it's not quite that long. But
There were dinosaurs.
Yeah, is that Rose Harvey, who was the Parks Commissioner for over 10 years. How long was it? Anyway, she's retiring, but it was her notion originally to push forward some of these ideas on the valley. And so, speaking for myself, but I think also for all of us here, we'll miss Rose, and she hopes she won't go back to Baltimore, and that because she's done an awful lot for the Greenway, and the Hudson River's done an awful lot for her too. As a matter of fact, it's all right. Now, Scott, let me see. Where are we? We've got some stuff to do here, some business. All right. We got the town of Rhinebeck calling the council meeting to order. The town of Rhinebeck has adopted the Greenway guides. Scott?
Yes. Most of the communities in Dutchess County have already joined the Greenway Compact. They don't need a vote, but when they do adopt the new Greenway guides that Dutchess County Planning has put out, we do like to let the board know. And the town of Rhinebeck has adopted 7 new Greenway guides.
How many are still left that haven't
adopted the guides or haven't joined the compact? There's one that hasn't joined the compact, and I'm not sure how many haven't adopted the guides.
All right, that's to Mount Kisco.
About half of the communities have adopted the 7 new guides.
Thank you, Owen.
Good.
You're welcome.
If you didn't hear that, he said about half of the communities have adopted the 7 new guides, so that's progress.
Mount Kisco.
Mount Kisco. Mount Kisco is requested to be a Greenway Compact community and has passed the appropriate resolutions, which Dan has reviewed and I have reviewed, and we think they're ready to be a Greenway Compact community.
We need a vote on that, I think.
We do.
So
Do you want to do it now, or do you want to wait for the grants?
let's do it right now.
Okay.
Bob raised his hand. He's moving it. We have a second. Second. All right. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Those opposed? All right. Now, as of that means that the town or the village of Mount Kisco
Is a Greenway Compact community.
an interesting community because it was moved by about 10 miles, right?
No.
Well,
Potono, not Kisco.
Okay, all right. So good for you, Mount Kisco. All right. And God, I should know that. All right, Scott, onward.
Yes, sir.
Council grants.
Yes. The first grant that the Grants Committee is recommending is for the town of Bethlehem for a comprehensive plan update. They're requesting $10,000, and the committee is recommending $10,000. This is an update to their 2005 comprehensive plan. They've been a Greenway community since March of 2001, and this is their first grant request, or their first grant that we're recommending be awarded. I think it's also their first grant request. Their director of planning, some of you may remember Rob Leslie, who was a Greenway intern for a couple of years back in the early 2000s. He is their director of planning now, so unfortunately I don't believe anybody from Bethlehem made it down. The weather was atrocious, right, Linda? The next grant is for the town of Marbletown in Ulster County for an historic High Falls Hamlet plan. A three-phase plan to include a parking layout study, a pocket park study, and an overall trails and connections study, which will partner nicely with the grant that we gave to the D&H Canal Historical Society at the last meeting through one of Beth's trail grants to do a trail loop study. And this will be a more complete full hamlet study. I don't believe we have anybody here from Marbletown. Next grant is from the town of Plano.
Hi, Scott.
Hi, Glenn.
Sorry the supervisor from Marbletown couldn't be here this morning, but they very much appreciate your support as they endeavor to be involved in sustainable economic development in that hamlet.
Thank you. The next is for the town of Plattekill in Ulster County, a comprehensive plan update. They have requested $10,000. The committee is recommending $10,000. And this is just a bread and butter comprehensive plan update. They want to use it to guide future town planning and zoning decisions. It's kind of what we do. Is there anyone here from Plattekill?
I think there's new leadership in Plattekill, so it's kind of exciting that they're talking about planning, which in the past they hadn't. I think their current comprehensive plan was filed when I was a teenager.
Nice. The next grant is to the town of Rensselaerville in Albany County. They are seeking to do a country to capital, a needs assessment for rural-urban linkages in Albany County. They are requesting $10,000. The grants committee is recommending $10,000. This is kind of a new concept for us. We haven't seen one of these before, but they are looking to link up services and products and businesses between the eastern, more developed half of Albany County, Albany and Colony, and the hill towns, which Rensselaerville is part of, and up on the ridge of the Helderbergs, and even some of the communities in Greene County. They want to get involved in this. So we're excited about this one. It's something new and different for us to fund. The village of Kinderhook with the village of Valatia in Columbia County are looking to do a recreational resource inventory. They have requested $10,000, and the committee has recommended $10,000. They are proposing to identify existing recreational resources in the two villages with a focus on Kinderhook Creek. And I know we have both mayors here, and being equal opportunity and someone who lived in Kinderhook for a while and went to school in Valatia, you both get a crack.
I just want to thank you. We're anxious to expand and improve the resources of Kinderhook Creek, especially for kayaking. And the Albany Hudson Electric Trail is right along a good portion of it. I've got to say especially a thanks just for the funding for the trail. We've been working on it for 15 or 20 years, and we've met with Carl Beers, who's attended some of our meetings. We've been to a couple sessions that Beth has put on, and finally it happened. We're very pleased, but that digresses a little from the grant, but thank you very much for the efforts for the trail, and again for the grant for the recreational study of the creek in the area.
I especially want to thank you because we have about 2 miles of park along the Kinderhook Creek system. We have yet to develop it. The one park is developed by volunteers, the other one by state grant. The National Guard that came and did that, and to develop these, to encompass them with our economic development in our village, deeply appreciated. We also want to thank Andy Beers and his staff for helping us out with the trail system. As Jim has said, we've worked on this thing for over 10 years, got nowhere, and the progress they have made has been tremendous. We want to thank him very much and the staff. Thank you, everybody.
Right, thank you. The next grant is for the Village of New Hempstead in Rockland County, which is a new community for us in terms of grant applications. They joined the Greenway in March of this year. They are requesting $10,000 to do a comprehensive plan, and the committee is recommending that. And Allison Wydrob is here from the village.
I'd just like to say thank you. We really appreciate everything that can be done. Thanks.
And the final grant the committee is recommending is for the Village of New Paltz in Ulster County for a reservoir capacity analysis. They're going to evaluate their existing reservoirs and tributaries and also evaluate their daily water usage, storage, and treatment capabilities to determine the potential additional flow for future water uses and also to determine watershed maximization and measures that may be needed for protection. Mayor Tim Rogers is here, and maybe you can explain that a little bit better than I can. This is a really cool project in light of climate change. This is a community stepping up and saying, we don't know what it's going to be like here in 20 years. Let's figure out if we have enough water and will have enough water into the future to serve our community's needs. And this is a partnership with the town of New Paltz.
Right. Thanks very much. Thanks for considering our application. I'm personally very excited about this project because we spend an enormous amount of time trying to figure out how we can source more drinking water locally and buy less water from the New York City DEP. So we currently source about 30 to 40% of our water locally and store it up in reservoirs up on property next to the Mohonk Preserve. And that water is a function of rain and snowmelt. So it's incredibly important that we have, that water that's less expensive than the expensive DEP water. So we're trying to do this in a way that's responsible and careful in terms of how we manage our property where the water treatment plant is. And that treatment plant serves the village of New Paltz, the town of New Paltz, SUNY New Paltz, all of our K through 12 school district. So it's incredibly important that we have this safe, affordable, reliable water source for our community, because without clean drinking water, we have really nothing to offer anyone.
And the village requested $16,513, and the committee is recommending $15,000. The total of all of the grants is $75,000 for this round. Sir, we need a vote.
Okay. It's also proper to mention that before you joined us, Andy Beers, there would have been about 10,000 in total. And I don't know how you've done it, but you have spent more money wisely than all the rest of us put together. And we thank you, and that's appropriate, I think, to say. Now, okay, Scott, let me see. We need to have a vote.
Correct.
We need to have moved, second. Thank you. Okay, you got both of them? Okay. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, thank you very much. Scott, now that's $75,000, which, as I said, was more than our whole budget a few years ago. And I think that concludes the council section of the meeting, and we thank you all very much for your attendance. Okay? Scott, anything else?
Heritage area. Now, I'll take that as you called it to order. We have some numbers on the 2018 Hudson River Valley Ramble. We had a total of 204 events with 146 reporting. We know of 65,266 attendees, which extrapolates to about 91,000, which is about the same as last year. So the numbers are holding steady on that, which shows the event is still popular. Next year will be the 20th anniversary of the Ramble, and we're going to make a joyful noise, Barney, as you like to say.
Just make a noise.
Beth, you're in charge of noise. The Hudson River Train Tour app, we've talked to you a lot about that. We have added, in partnership with Friends Hudson River Estuary Program, a new theme as of last week, the Hudson Up Close. It is 43 sites on the East Shore to see, get on, or get in the river. So we're excited about that. It gives a new theme. We now have 6 themes. And our advertising company, BBG&G, has won 2 awards for the video that they produced for us. A Marcom Award Honorable Mention, which is an international creative competition recognizing outstanding achievement in marketing and communication, and an HSMAI Adrian Award Silver Medal, and they're a global organization of sales, marketing, and revenue management professionals. So we're pleased about that. Last item on the agenda for the Heritage area. Last year, the Management Committee voted to partner with the Preservation League of New York on their technical assistance grants, TAGs. We promoted it in our newsletter, and I was informed that they got more applications than they have normally seen out of the Hudson Valley. We provided $10,000 towards it, and they were able to award $23,453 for 8 awards. To the Rensselaer Library for an engineering and structural analysis, and these grants are capped at $3,000, so these are really small grants. The Robert Jenkins House Specialized Conservation Study in Hudson, Columbia County. The Creek Meeting House in Clinton Corners for a feasibility reuse study. The Aiken Free Library for an engineering structural analysis. They're located in Pauling. The Old School Baptist Meeting House Building Condition Survey in Warwick and Orange County. The Kingston Library Building Condition Survey in Kingston. The Elephant Hotel Building Condition Survey in Somers, Westchester County. And the Percy Granger House Building Condition Survey in White Plains, Westchester County. And Christina Hingle is here. Christina, if you'd like to say a word.
Hello.
Yep,
On behalf of the Preservation League, I just wanted to again thank the Hudson River Valley National Heritage Area for their contribution to our grant program, our Technical Assistant Grants, or TAG program. Because of this, we were able to, as Scott said, get more money going into the Hudson River Valley for very important cultural and arts institutions. This year, the Preservation League was able to award $55,000 in total with funding from the NISCA Foundation as well. And we were able to fund not only 8 grants in the Hudson Valley, but for a total of 19 across New York State. So thank you for your support.
Thank you. It was a great partnership. I was fortunate enough to be able to attend the statewide panel of 4 who discussed and made the recommendations to award, and I was very impressed with both the applications and with the panel and the people on your staff. Executive Director's Report, if you don't mind if I segue right into the Dara? It's supposed to be on now. It's up to the individual PBS stations when they show it. So what they are going to show is just him with a lead-in, and then you've seen the video. Dara, would you stand up? Dara Marin is our new program manager for the Empire State Trail. She started about a day before the last board meeting. We didn't throw her in at that one, but welcome, Dara. She's a welcome addition. I know she's making Paul's job easier, and that makes Andy's job easier. Anything you want to add? Other than that, most of what's in my executive director's report has already been discussed, but as always, I want to thank the staff for outstanding work in an extremely limited capacity. If you would all stand up, please, and let the board and the audience recognize you. And I'm sure you've all noticed, but by the next board meeting, Shannon probably won't be here. Shannon is looking to add a new member to the Greenway fold sometime in January, so Shannon will be on maternity leave by the next board meeting, and we're looking forward to having you back soon. And that is new business public comment. Is anybody? Colonel, we always start with you, Colonel.
Mr. McHenry had given you subscriptions for this. Those have expired. So we hope that you will renew your subscriptions once you, I think you've already received your renewal notice. In fact, if you're in a hurry, I can talk to you afterwards. If you notice, the cover article is Thomas Cole in the Catskills, and I noticed that there's an organization, a world organization, that says the only place to visit in the U.S. is the Catskills. So, you can read about what Thomas Cole thought about that. I mean, really, no other location in the U.S. was recognized in this survey except for the Catskills. Yes, exactly. You can even see them up there from the Hudson River Valley. So, please renew your subscriptions. I'm hoping that the W3R panels for West Point will be installed soon. That's been one of our projects.
Tell them what the W3R is.
Washington Rochambeau Revolutionary Route National Historic Trail, National Park Service program, and there will be a wayside exhibit for the chief engineer for the Continental Army, Duportai, as well as another wayside exhibit that shows the entire 600-mile Washington Rochambeau Revolutionary Route. You can read about that, an article I did in the New Review, in addition to an article by Dr. James Kirby Martin about the American Revolution.
What's the review called?
The Hudson River Valley Review Survey. The last thing is we're planning a conference for next June, we hope, if we can pull this all together. Does anyone remember what happened in August of 1969? Woodstock Festival. So we're going to have an academic conference to try and explain why that conference took place in Sullivan County, to give some sense of what the 60s were like. And that will, you'll hear more about this. If anybody there? Your boyfriend?
I can't wait to see the Colonel in tie-dye.
All right, so we need to talk. So we're going to try to see if we can pull that off. We're trying to partner with Bethel Woods because that's the site of that festival, and we're hoping that maybe some music angle might come out of that as well. So that will keep you up to date, but that's looking like June of 2019. Thank you very much.
Colonel, you do good work. We all applaud you. Any other comments, questions? Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
I just wanted to let you know that our final sixth workshop, which is the focus on funding, sponsored by the Hudson River Valley National Heritage Area, is going to be on November 27th, and it's in partnership with the Preservation League. We have Francis Grubner is going to talk all about your wonderful grants, the TAG grants, Preserve New York, and it is at 10 o'clock in the morning. You're welcome to go to our website at greaterhudson.org. You can sign up for the webinar and learn all about the wonderful grants that the Preservation League has in partnership with the Greenway. And I wanted to also thank the Greenway so much for sponsoring our annual conference. It was held on Tuesday, September 25th at the Bear Mountain Inn and Conference Center. Let's see, Dan was there and the other young gentleman. Yes, you were with us. We had a sold-out audience, and it was a very successful conference, so I really appreciate you both being there for office hours and for sponsoring our conference again. So thank you for all that you do on behalf of all the heritage organizations throughout the Hudson Valley. We couldn't do it without all your support.
Yes.
Hi, Barbara Sweet, and I'm here from Hyde Park. We've got a beautiful river valley. It's a National Heritage Area, but we do have some houses that are painted and buildings that are white. and light colors. And when you go into a dark room and a light goes on, where does your eye go? Directly to the light. And so when we look out into the valley, we see these white spots. So if we could somehow get into the Greenway guidelines, maybe a chapter about, you can't really tell people what they're going to paint there, what colors they're going to use. But we could encourage earth tone colors. For example, if you look out at the FDR library, it's gray, but it's not white trim. It's a green, okay? So earth tone colors, greens, browns, beige, those types of colors, because you get a person, they buy a piece of property, they build a house, paint it white, white siding, whatever, and then they cut a whole lot of lawn so that they can see the river and we can see it. So I don't know whether there can be partnerships across the river. We won't pollute your view. Please don't pollute ours. Or whether they could be something in the Greenway guidelines, another chapter. Just a suggestion.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I'll just say my follow-up. Last time we were at the Newburgh event, I talked about our World War I trip. So it took place. We led 15 people from Orange County and 30 from New York City. We met on the battlefield in the Somme American Cemetery in St. Quentin Canal, so the Hindenburg Line, on the anniversary 100 years later. So Orange County and also people from all around the Hudson Valley were well represented at the cemetery for the centennial.
Nice. All right, I just want to let everyone know that on the back of your agendas are our 2019 Greenway Board meeting dates. March 13th is our next meeting, June 12th, September 4th, and November 13th. So we look forward to seeing everyone.
Any other questions or comments? Because in the meantime, it's Happy Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year. And as we enter another, and what is this, what year is this for us, Scott? We've been at this damn thing.
Oh, you and I about 32?
Yeah, about that, yeah. So, anyway, and so we send greetings to Rose Harvey, who was one of the, as we noted, one of the founders. And we thank all of you for what you've done. And I also should note that, and you all do recognize that these grants are examined carefully by our grants committee, which is, generally speaking, on my right-hand side here. And anything else, Scott, we can think of?
No, sir.
Except to say,
We're getting everybody out early.
Yeah, this is the shortest meeting we've ever had.